Quick context if this is your first time hearing about this game. Killing Floor 3 is set in 2091 in a world where a corporation called Horzine creates bioengineered creatures called Zeds, basically zombies built in a lab rather than born from a virus. A resistance group called Nightfall exists specifically to hunt down the people inside. Horzine's still creating new ones. One of those people is Dr. Moorcroft, and Moorcroft doesn't think he's creating monsters, he thinks he's finishing what evolution forgot to do. That's the difference between Dr. Moorcroft and every other mad scientist trope you've seen in 100 other games. He's not cackling in a basement. He genuinely believes a substance called the Mire is the next stage of human development, and he's been quietly proving it on living test subjects for years, with the full backing of one of the most powerful corporations on Earth. This is the story of the Mire, what it actually is, what it does to the body, why a man this dangerous still has actual followers, and what one recent discovery in Antarctica suggests this substance might really be tearing open. Let's get into it. First, let's separate two things this game throws at you constantly, because the line between them matters more than it looks. Zeds, remember, are the creatures themselves bioengineered by Horzine through genetic experimentation. That's the original sin of the entire franchise, going all the way back to Horzine's founder trying to clone his dead son decades ago and accidentally creating the very first one of these creatures instead. The Mire is different. The Mire isn't a creature at all. It's a substance, something used, applied, infused into living tissue to create entirely new categories of Zeds, types that didn't exist in the earlier games. Think of it like an upgrade applied to something that already exists, rather than the thing itself. It's the next generation of weaponized biology, and it's specifically Dr. Moorcroft's personal project. He's the head of Horzine's R&D Red Division, and he's not hiding what he believes. He thinks the Mire is the next step in human evolution, not a weapon. Not a soldier upgrade, evolution itself. And that single belief is exactly what makes Moorcroft so much more dangerous than your average corporate scientist villain. Villains who want power are easy to understand. Villains who think they're correct are a completely different kind of dangerous because they don't see themselves as the threat, they see themselves as the solution. Moorcroft isn't following orders from above. He's not even really doing this for Horzine's benefit. He's a true believer. Someone who looked at the Mire and decided humanity itself is incomplete. And this substance is the missing piece, and he's not alone in that belief. A man named Edgar Hobbs follows him with what's described as vehement, blind devotion. Not because Hobbs understands the science, because he trusts Moorcroft completely, the way a follower trusts a prophet rather than the way a colleague trusts an expert. But not everyone in that lab sees it the same way. A woman named Pam Medford used to support Moorcroft's genome editing work back when it was framed as research for a noble cause. Somewhere along the way, watching what the Mire actually does to the people exposed to it, she turned against him entirely. She now sees his research as a direct threat to humanity, not its next step. Same lab, same substance, two completely opposite conclusions. That split is the real heart of this story, not heroes versus monsters, a genuine disagreement about whether something can save humanity or end it, playing out inside the walls of the same research division. So what does the Mire actually produce when it's used on something living? The clearest example we have so far is a Zed called the Scavenger. It's described as the complete symbiosis of the Mire with invertebrate life. Basically a bug-like creature created by fusing the Mire into something insect-based rather than human-based. It was originally traced back to a location called the Dread Zone in Old London. And here's the part that should actually stop you. It eats its own dead. There's a larger version called the Alpha Scavenger that dominates the smaller ones, and it's been observed cannibalizing other scavenger corpses, which gives it temporary regenerative properties and stronger attacks. Sit with that for a second, a creature that gets physically stronger by eating its own species. That's not a side effect of bad science. That's a survival mechanism built in deliberately enough to actually function under pressure. And it's not an isolated trait either. Regular scavengers hunt in coordinated packs rather than swarming chaotically the way a basic Zed does. They specifically target enemies that are already wounded. Underneath a heavily armored exterior, they have specific weak points that have to be exposed before they can be killed at all, which means the armor was placed deliberately protecting something specific. The Mire doesn't just make things stronger, it makes things smarter, more deliberate, more like something designed, rather than something that's simply mutated by accident. Now, here's where this stops being a story about a scientist with bad ethics and starts becoming something genuinely stranger. The game's developers recently released new content called Operation Deep Freeze, essentially a new chapter added to the story, after the main campaign ended, and it pushes Moorcroft's research somewhere nobody expected. It sends Nightfall agents to the Brunt ice shelf in Antarctica, about as remote and isolated a location as exists anywhere on the planet, specifically because that's where Moorcroft and his Mire experiments have been tracked down, and what they find waiting for him there isn't just another lab. It's described directly as his latest extra-dimensional experiments, extra-dimensional, not genetic, not biological in any traditional sense at all. The whatever Moorcroft has been doing with the Mire since the main story ended, it has moved past evolution and crossed into something that sounds a lot closer to reality itself being unstable. Nightfall agents arrive expecting to stop a scientist who's gone too far with bioweapons. What they actually find is a man who may have discovered that the Mire isn't just rewriting biology, it might be touching something underneath biology entirely. And the story makes a point of telling us Moorcroft himself is becoming increasingly unstable, not metaphorically as part of the actual plot. The implication is that whatever he's been exposing himself to in pursuit of this research is starting to change him too, the same way it's changed every test subject before him. So here's a question worth sitting with. What if he's actually right? Not right that any of this is good for humanity, right? That the Mire really is the next stage of something, whether anyone gives it permission or not. Because evolution in the real sense doesn't ask permission. It doesn't care about good or evil. It just keeps whatever survives. If that's true, Moorcroft isn't creating monsters out of nothing. He might just be the first person paying close enough attention to notice what was already starting to happen. That's the Mire, a substance that started as Horzine's latest weapons research and somehow ended up sounding like it's unraveling something far stranger than biology hidden at the bottom of the world, inside the mind of a man who doesn't believe he's creating the apocalypse. He believes he's finishing it. If you're new here, this is just the start of our Killing Floor 3 lore series, and you don't need to have played the game at all to follow along. Subscribe so you catch the next one, and drop a comment. Do you think Moorcroft is wrong about the Mire being the next step in evolution? Or is Nightfall about to discover he was right the whole time, just for all the wrong reasons? Tell me what you think.